And I'm going to also present my slides. I don't think, yeah, here we go. Let's see. And then I think on, hopefully we'll have audio. I think so. Yay. Okay, I'm going to give it a second. Hopefully that works for him. Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin. So we are in week 2 of English 10. And just as a special note, February is Black History Month. So I have a quote from Frederick Douglass. And I do highly recommend reading the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. It's such an inspiring read. So this particular quote says, once you learn to read, you will forever be free. So just, discussing the impact of being literate and what reading can do for a person. So we are going to do a quick check-in. I will do a week 2 walkthrough. We're going to review indirect characterization. And I do want to practice inference making with Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So that's what I have planned for today. Okay, so how are you today? You can put it in the chat and it will come directly to me. So I have it set where the messages just come to me. And let me just double check that, but I'm almost positive that's how I have it set. Let's see the chat. Oh, let's see. Oh no, it's set to you where you can send it to everybody, but I can change that. So you can chat with me only. Okay, so you can just tell me how you're doing. So are you in the red zone? Are you in the yellow zone, blue zone, green zone? And it's just important to take stock of how you're feeling because that does impact everything. Yay, good. And Esteban, the sound is working now, right? Good, okay. So Esteban, I'm just gonna give you a second. You can tell me how you're doing. I think I am also in the yellow quadrant. Yesterday was my, I had a session in middle school reading and I switched to Zoom in middle school reading too. And it was a little bit challenging because I didn't know how to juggle the Pear Deck and the Zoom. And so I pared it down today where I'm just doing Zoom and slides. So I'm feeling a little bit better about being able to manage. So that is making me feel optimistic. Okay, here we go. And okay, so the Zoom guidelines, it's just always important for me to go over these things. So in the scenario that I put you into breakout rooms, I just ask that you be respectful of your peers and their ideas. It's totally okay to disagree with a peer. That is normal. We don't all think or believe the same things, but you can be respectful towards others regardless of disagreement. And then you guys already used your real name, so that's perfect. And then just as some reminders, it's important to be dressed appropriately or, be seated upright in an appropriate space if you have your video on. And then we'll be on mute, but I don't think it'll be an issue because this is a small group. And then we would want to have fun. So this is just a screenshot of the pace chart. So this week's work is totally focused really on this independent novel choice. You're just going to continue recording pages on the reading tracker. This is due in week 13. And then you're going to complete and submit T2 characterization. So I'm going to look specifically at this T2 characterization. And we're going to come here. So we do need to refresh. We need to refresh our memories as to what indirect characterization is. What do you remember about indirect characterization? What is it? Can you guys, if you remember anything about it, can you put it in the chat? What do you remember about indirect characterization? So I'm going to give you a minute. So if you remember anything about indirect characterization, go ahead and put that in the chat. I think I have it. I can switch the chat so it goes to everybody, and that might work a little bit better. I'm going to do it like that. I'm just going to give it a second. Yes, that's perfect. So Allison said when they show you who the character is instead of telling. Yeah, so kind of like a little acronym I have in my mind is show versus know, because the author sometimes directly states aspects of character. You know, it's just a blunt, direct statement. But then the author also gives us hint as to who this character is through character action, how the character is received by other characters in the novel. There's just all kinds of tells. So we are going to work a little bit more with indirect characterization. And we have established a definition. So it's when an author shows elements of character versus a direct explicit statement about character. So I want to know, who is one of your favorite characters and why? And I have one, I have one of my favorite characters, and it is Miguel from Coco. And he is probably one of my favorites because he is so committed to pursuing music despite his family's desire that he stay away from music. And I especially love this scene in the movie where he has gone to the world of the dead, and he promises his, I think it's grandmother Imelda, he promises her, I promise I'll go back. I'm not going to do music. The second he's there, he starts strumming on the guitar and he's like kicked right back to the world of the dead. So in that moment, I can I can infer some elements of his character in terms of like, he is committed, he is independent, he is free spirited. I guess you could call it rebellious, but I don't necessarily see it in like a negative sense. But so in that moment when he chooses to disobey his grandmother or great grandmother, I see elements of his character despite it not being explicitly stated in the text. So does anybody want to share their favorite character with me, or one of them? There's, you know, I'm sure you could have many, but I'm just curious, who might be a favorite character? Oh, yes. I love Little Women. I think I like all of the sisters in Little Women, honestly. Esteban, do you have a favorite character? Oh, I don't think I know that one. I'm gonna have to look that up. Is Victorious a book, or is it like I don't know, like a TV series? Ah, cool. Okay, so let's see. We have another English 10 friend coming in. So, okay, I'll wait for her to connect to audio. Okay, hi Sydney. Oh, I don't think she can hear yet. Hi, Sydney. We're just in the middle of talking about indirect characterization. So just to give you, you know, an idea of where we are. And we are refreshing our memory as to what indirect characterization is. So it's when an author shows who a character is through actions, dialogue, perhaps how other characters perceive the character. So it's just, you know, you would have to infer character details or character elements through action or dialogue. We'll go over more in terms of like how to do that more clearly. Okay, so we're just talking about favorite characters. And part of the reason why those characters are your favorite most likely is because of the way the author or the creator indirectly characterizes that person, right? Because you see how they behave, and the behavior gives tells as to who they are. Okay, so this is what we have for this week. Again, we are inferring character. This is the assignment doc for this T2 characterization. And these are the 4 different options that go along with this, you know, with this, I guess, goal. All of these things are in this in the week 2 folder on Blackboard. So I'm not necessarily going to open them now, but each of them asks you to work on inference. And inference needs to be evidence-based. So you have to be sure to identify text evidence that you think informs your inference. So we are going to work specifically on that skill today, this using text evidence to infer. And then here are some more explicit ways, or I guess specific ways, that an author may characterize indirectly. And this particular infographic is on this assignment. Okay, so they reveal characters via dialogue, right? What does the character's vocabulary, voice, register? Is it formal or informal, or choice of topics reveal? What do the physical details or gestures indicate? So how do details of dress or gestures often render them easy to spot in a crowd? So these are like, you could even use these in real life, honestly, because you can use these details to infer ideas about character for real life people also. And we do this all the time, right? We think about what a person says, their vocabulary. We think perhaps about the way a person dresses, and that could be unfortunate, honestly. But when you think about it in terms of, like, say, a job interview, you would want to go to the job interview dressed appropriately, right? If you didn't go to the job interview dressed appropriately, that would also inform your idea as to character. We would think about characters in terms of their environment. So their environment, what is their home like? What is their personal space like? Do they have a particular thing that they love, and that's the thing that they've decorated their whole house with? That would indicate element of character. We can infer character through actions. So how do they behave? What do they do in response to situations? And what is this character's effect on others? So how do the people around the character react to the character? So we are going to use Their Eyes Were Watching God to practice inferring character using some of those elements. This is one of my favorite books. I read it for the first time going into ninth grade when I was in high school. And I just think it's beautiful. So I'm going to give you just like a 1.5 minute background on the book, because oftentimes context does play strongly in the ability to comprehend the text. And this particular book is dependent on its time period. So it's set in the 1920s and 30s in the South. And so you probably already know, but that was, when Jim Crow was in full swing. So that significantly impacts our character's life. Okay, and her name is Janie. I believe they introduced that in the summary, so I'm just going to let it go.
Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God is a coming-of-age novel set in the late 1920s and early 1930s in an all-Black town in Central Florida. In the introduction, Janie Mae Crawford returns home to Eatonville, where local residents or porch sitters gossip about why she's come back without her husband. Phoebe Watson, Janie's best friend, visits her to find out, and Janie tells her her life story.
Okay. That's honestly all we need, because we are only going to look at the very beginning of Their Eyes Were Watching God. So we know she is coming back from someplace. We don't know where she's coming back from. She's returning to her hometown, and the people around her are judging her. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so this is my excerpt. And again, this is the very beginning. Now, when I'm looking at my text, there we go. When I'm looking at my text, even before we can make inferences, we have to be sure we comprehend clearly. If there is not clear comprehension, our inference most likely will not be accurate. So as I'm reading, I ask myself questions and I pause to be sure that I do actually comprehend the text. So I'll just read the excerpt out loud, and these are the questions that I had as I read it. So it says, ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing until the watcher turns his eyes away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men. Now, women forget all those things they don't want to remember and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is truth. Then they act and do things accordingly. So the beginning of this was a woman, and she had come back from burying the dead. Not the dead of sick and ailing with friends at the pillow and the feet. She had come back from the sodden and the bloated, the sudden dead, their eyes flung wide open in judgment. The people all saw her come because it was sundown. The sun was gone, but he had left his footprints in the sky. It was the time for sitting on porches beside the road. It was the time to hear things and talk. These sitters had been tongueless, earless, eyeless conveniences all day long. Mules and other brutes had occupied their skins, but now the sun and the boss man were gone, so the skins felt powerful and human. They became lords of sound and lesser things. They passed nations through their mouths. They sat in judgment. Okay, there is a lot here. There is a lot here. When I read this, okay, I'm going to exit out of my presentation so I can type. Uh-oh, let me see if it's going to let me do it. There we go. Okay, so I am here. I want to type, and I better make this smaller. Okay, so there is so much here to kind of digest. When I look at this first paragraph, I need to determine, so I asked myself, what does Hurston suggest about dreams for men? She says, for some, the dreams come in with the tide. For others, they're out in the distance. They're always there, but they're always out of reach. And so they turn their eyes away in resignation. So does Hurston think that all men are able to achieve their dreams? You can just put like a yes or no in the chat. Let me see. Okay. No, she doesn't. It's so sad. So of course we could do a lot of talking about, like we could talk about tone. We could talk about how this perhaps builds mood. We could talk about how this could perhaps infuse theme. We could do a lot of work here, but we don't want to because we're just focusing on character. Okay, so, and then of course we're just working on the comprehension element. So it is likely that all men, okay, it is, all men will not be able to achieve their dreams, and they turn their eyes away in resignation. So I feel their defeat. Like I feel defeat in this. I feel defeat in this segment because they want their dreams. Okay, so with women, she separates the men and the women. How do you think Hurston characterizes women in this particular little segment where she says, women forget all those things they don't want to remember and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is truth. So what is the dream? Take a second to think about it. This is a challenging text, so just think about it. And it's okay if we don't come upon the same conclusion. So I read this excerpt, I read it last night, and then I reread it this morning. And actually, I feel like I have a different conclusion now that it has been sitting in my mind. So she begins and she says, women are able to forget those things they don't want to hang on to. And they remember the things they don't want to forget. She says, the dream is truth. This line is key to me. I think she is indicating that women's deal with reality. That's the conclusion I've come to this morning. And I think it's more accurate in terms of the whole scope of the book. So women deal in reality, not in dreams. So we have this kind of dichotomy, right? Where she says the men's eyes are always on the horizon. They are always searching for these dreams. They might be out of reach and they can be defeated. But the women, they are able to forget what they don't need. They hang on to what they do need because their lives are anchored in reality. So that's what I'm getting from the text. Okay, of course you can disagree with that. That's totally fine. This is just what I'm pulling out from this particular excerpt. Okay, so we need to know what could have happened to our protagonist. It says, so the beginning of this was a woman and she had come back from burying the dead. So what happened to her based just on that line? I'll give it a second. Okay. Yes, she has lost someone. Someone has died. She has buried this person. We don't know why. Okay, so oopsies. I need to put it on my doc. She has lost someone. I'm going to leave it at that. Then we know she has returned home. How did the people in the community react to her? And I'm going to, it says the people all saw her come. They're all sitting on their porches. And I'm just going to jump down to the last line. They sat in judgment. So how did they respond to her? Yes, I'm just going to put that. They are judging and gossiping about her. That is spot on. Okay, so that's that. We have the basics of this particular excerpt. And now we can look at, we can even dive in more closely and examine, we can kind of like magnify one particular quote. So we identify text evidence we want to work with, we consider what we know, and determine what we can infer. So this particular quote is the one I've pulled out. So the beginning of this was a woman, and she had come back from burying the dead, not the dead of sick and ailing with friends at the pillow and the feet. She had come back from the sodden and the bloated, the sudden dead, their eyes flung wide open in judgment. Okay, so I'm just going to model this one. With this particular excerpt, okay, I notice that someone close to Janie has died. And this is where I bring in my own reactions, right? Okay, I would imagine that she is devastated if she has lost someone close to her. Okay, so I am thinking about, I am reacting to what's happening, right? Someone has died in her life. So if I have lost someone, this is what I would feel. And this is what we do with inference. We pull in what we know from our own personal experience and we combine it with what we see in the text. Okay, the other thing I notice is down here. Okay, the death is sudden, which means to me that it might impact her more emotionally because a sudden tragedy seems harder to grapple with than one that is expected. It might impact her more emotionally. Okay, and then this word down here, judgment. I'm just going to actually leave it as a question. I am curious as to why the author indicates that the person who has passed is has their eyes open in judgment. Okay, so that's kind of like something I know I need to deal with. Then what can I infer? I know she's dealing with intense grief. Okay, it's likely that Janie is dealing with intense grief, but she is able to travel home on her own, which indicates to me strength. She is strong. She didn't fall apart, right? She is traveling from somewhere. And just because I am more familiar with the book, it's quite a distance that she's had to travel. So this is not a weak woman. This is someone who is very grounded and she's just very strong. Okay, so I said it's likely that Janie isn't dealing with intense grief, but she's able to travel on her home, which indicates her strength. Secondly, Janie, let's see, this word down here, judgment. I think it indicates that she feels guilty. Secondly, the author indicates that the person who passed is judging Janie. And this word choice indicates to me that Janie perhaps feels guilt or responsible? Because that's a really interesting word choice. I don't necessarily, and I really hate to talk about, this kind of like macabre subject, but, imagine if there was some tragic accident, like if this is just, I hate to imagine this honestly, but imagine there was this like horrible car crash. I don't know that Janie would feel responsible in that situation, but she says that the eyes are open in judgment. So that word judgment indicates to me that there is some level of responsibility. It's not some random accident. So it also gives us a previewing as to what's to come. Okay, so it's really important that we pull out those words because they build something. They are working towards something. I think I dealt with what I need to over here. Now, here's our second excerpt. This is also, there's so much here. But so this is the quote, and we are going to focus, we can focus on a couple things, but I'm going to read it. But now the sun and the boss man were gone. So the skins felt powerful and human. They became lord of sounds and lesser things. They passed nations through their mouths. They sat in judgment. Okay, so we have this line up here, but now the sun and the boss man were gone. Okay, so this indicates that the people, the porch sitters, they're off work. What kind of relationship do they have with their employer? That's what I'm curious about. Do you have any ideas as to what kind of relationship they have with their employer? Yes. Yeah. So Allison said they feel that the employer runs their lives. Maybe he is white. Yes. So I think that is perfect. There is, okay. The people feel that the employer runs their lives. And in that scenario, okay, I'm imagining a scenario in which I have very little autonomy. So I would think that in that situation, I would be stripped of all individuality. I'm like sort of dehumanized. That's how I would respond to that situation. So I imagine that the work environment strips everyone of individuality. Oops, and is dehumanizing. Okay, and we kind of get that idea through the text because she says mules and other brutes had occupied their skins. So we have these words here. She compares them to animals. And I think that plays into this idea that they are stripped of their humanity, right? So I'm using the text, but I'm also imagining would it be like to be in that scenario and how would I react as a person? Okay, let's see. So now it seems like they became lords of sound and lesser things. Now we have this word switch, right? They go from being skins to lords. Okay, so what does that shift in language indicate? They go from being, they go from being, I guess you could call commodities, right? Where they're stripped of individuality to, and they're being seen purely as a resource in a workspace, but then they become lords. So it's like they have very little rights to what? Oh, Anastasia's here. Let me see, I'll give her a second. Yeah, they control their own lives again. They have ownership. Okay, the word, let's see. I would imagine if I were in their situation, when I got off work, I would be able to, I'm looking for a particular word. I'm trying to pull out words from my mind. My humanity would come back full force, I guess I would say. My humanity and individuality would come back full force, and they would control their own lives again. Okay. So I kind of did double duty there. I feel like some of this actually belongs in the what can I infer, because I'm looking at word choice, but that's okay. So I'm going to make my final conclusion, and I'm going to say, let's see. Okay, the language indicates that the people react to their, let's see, the people resume full, and I'm not sure about this word choice right here, resume, but that's okay, because I'm still in the draft stage. They resume full humanity and take ownership of their lives. Hurston uses language of dominion. I feel like I'm on a roll now. Of dominion and royalty to indicate this change in behavior or character. They become lords of their lives away from their work. I feel pretty good about that. Do you feel like I need to add anything? Because, writing is always kind of a work in progress. I can always kind of evaluate what I have written and perhaps add another detail or shift it in another direction, because I might have missed something. So let me know if you feel like there's something else I could pull out, or maybe if I missed over something. But I feel like it's probably okay. Okay, oops. So Anastasia, I know you jumped in afterwards, and that's totally fine, but we have been talking about indirect characterization. And so indirect characterization is when an author shows elements of character versus directly stating something. So, the author might say like, oh, and I'm looking at this book, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. The author might explicitly say, Janie is confident and she desires to own her own business. That would be direct characterization, because they're telling me specifically what is going on, with her character. But with indirect, we look at the hints given to us through dialogue, through her physical details and gestures. So like a description of like what she is like and how she moves. We can look at her environment. We can infer who she is through her actions, and we can infer who she is based on others' response to her. So down here, we looked at this first quote. And so the book is about this woman. She's coming back from some other location to her hometown. We don't know exactly what the location is in the beginning, but it reveals to us that she has just experienced a death of someone close to her. And as she walks back into town, all of the people of the town are sitting there watching her, judging her. So that's what we know from the outset. So then I looked at this particular quote and I did some inference work with it. So the quote was, so the beginning of this was a woman and she had come back from burying the dead, not the dead of sick and ailing with friends at the pillow and their feet. She had come back from the sodden and the bloated, the sudden dead, their eyes flung wide open in judgment. And I pulled out particular words to inform my thinking about who Janie is. And from this particular excerpt, I kind of inferred that Janie is very strong because it's likely that she is dealing with intense grief, but she is able to travel home on her own, which indicates her strength. Secondly, the author indicates that the person who passed is judging Janie. And this word choice indicates to me that Janie perhaps feels guilt or responsibility. Whoops, responsibility. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for when we're doing this inference work. We're taking a specific piece of evidence. We're thinking about, what do we know? How would I react in this situation? And then we combine the two to come to a conclusion about who she is. And then we did the same thing here. And I do feel like I missed something. They sat in judgment because I'm really thinking about Janie. I can think about these secondary characters as well, but my focus should be on Janie right now because she is the protagonist. So based on this line here, they sat in judgment. Would you imagine that they receive her positively, or they view her coming home all by herself without her husband negatively? What would it be, positive or negative in terms of their judgment? Yeah, negative. Okay, so I'm going to say, and I think the length of the sentence also indicates that it's not a positive reception, because I'm thinking, oh, if somebody's coming home from a long trip, I might like run and be like, oh my gosh, you're home. Hey, big hug, right? That seems normal to me. But they're all just sitting back on the porch and they're just watching her walk into town. So I'm going to say, let's see. The last sentence indicates that Janie is not well received and that the people do not, or the people view her negatively because she is coming home alone. They are judging her. Okay, now I think I got it. So really, I inferred elements of character relating to the people in the town, and I also inferred elements of Janie's character based on the reception. Okay, so that's really all I have planned today. I really appreciate your participation. It makes it so much more fun for me. Do you have any questions? So with the particular assignment, this is kind of like the core work you will be doing. Like, you have to have idea in your mind as to who these characters are. Once you have that, then you could do these. So this diary entry would kind of be like it's kind of like a synthesis. You take who you think the character is and you run with it in a diary entry. And then you would create a character Facebook profile. It's got a dual, like, you would just pull out specific details about who they are, but then you also do that synthesis work. And then the same here. This is like a synthesis work if you're writing a newspaper article about the character. And then this last one is a making character inferences. And I think that one's probably the one that is most straightforward, but you would just, go through it in sequence, and you would like pull out those specific examples. So in the way that I did it with my text excerpt, I have those specific pieces of evidence that I worked with. So that's, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you need help, let me know so I can help you, and you could come, with like a text excerpt from your book, and we could look at it together, and I might say, oh yeah, this is what I see in that. So just let me know how I can help. Otherwise, you are free to go if you don't have any questions. And I think that's it. Bye. Bye, Anastasia. Let's see.